Previously on Aoi Shiro, we learned was a whole forest of wondrous Tokusaki no Tsubaki in Urashima, so I thought that was the Eternal Island.
そこで浦島に渡る方法を知って、私は私で興味を惹かれることがあったから、夏姉さんを騙して剣を手に入れようとしたのは。
Were you? The one-eyed, white-haired Omiyuji. Sekiganki was.
浦島の鬼の大将?
Ding 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 ding! Where was Natsumi-san going? What was she going to do?
いろいろ誤解をしていたみたいだから、確かめたいことがあるのよ。
I knew where she was headed. There was only one place I could think of that would cause Natsumi-san to make an expression like that. Sekiganki. Baroryu was the one that deceived Natsumi-san. But the one who took me away and killed Natsumi-san was...
Nekataさんのところに行ってくる。
First, I apologized for thinking the Tsubaki's spirit was the Sekiganki, Baroryu. That caused her to hit me on the head. Poor Shioko.
かわいいもんだな。この俺が丸腰だとでも思ったかよ。
Roryu stuck out the palm of his black hand. Something started to gather there.
来たれ我が矛。流撃よ。
Both parties had no intentions of coming to an understanding. Both parties had no intentions to compromise. That's why there was no choice but to break the other opponent.
それでは最後のネカタの祭儀を執り行います。
In a sonorous voice, Nekata Munutsugu announced that he was going to conduct the final ritual.
竜宮の剣、謹んでお返し申し上げます。
He offered up the final sacrifice. Then,
門から光が。翔ちゃん、今度は離さない。今度こそは守ってみせるから。約束。約束よ。そうだ。まだ言ってなかったことがあるの。夏姉さん、お帰りなさい。
and so it continues. Greetings, my name is Neosekken, welcome back to my Let's Play of Aoi Shiro. So, now that I got Kaya's good ending out of the way, I'm gonna now start working on getting the other missing endings on her route before moving on to Kohaku. So, I'm gonna be working my way from the bottom up once again. And I'm going to just try to start that journey from here with these three choices. Because looking at the flowchart, we got all the... Towards this section of the bottom here, we got all these different routes, and I'm going to assume potentially at least 2 different endings. I'm guessing. I have no idea how many are actually down here at the bottom, for sure. And I feel that this would just be a generally good place to start as any here in order to try to find different endings. So, I'm going to choose to take care of Nami, and we're going to go from there and see what's new.
この子を安全な場所に隠しておきたいんですけど。
But thinking about it, if there were another sacrifice, then Nami would not be made into a sacrifice. Then, would the safest thing be to let her keep sleeping here? Even if that weren't the case, if we defeated Nekata Munutsugu and Baroryu, then she should be safe. Okay, we're given another option anyway.
進行。カーソルを合わせると章題が表示されるわよ。
So I guess this choice doesn't really matter all that much unless I choose to go to the Sea Shrine, I assume.
進行状態の把握は。
Just to be sure, let's go try Sanctuary next.
その力。スキップよ。用語進行上。カーソルを合わせると章題が表示されるわよ。
Where is this one little branch right down here.
進行状態。カーソルを合わせると章題が表示されるわよ。
Not sure which one I want to choose to go with here. On second thought, I think I'm just going to make a jump cuts to sections that I know are going to have new content, or until I just happen to stumble upon it, just to save time for all of us here. So, instead of choosing Sleeping Beauty, we're going to choose what to do. In order to wake up Natsune-san,
Osa!
my attention had been directed inwards, but hearing Migawa's voice, I directed my attention outwards as something came flying. As something entered my field of vision, I reflexively caught it, shocking my palm with a numbing pain. What I had caught, and what Migawa had passed me, was a small bottle filled with a viscous red liquid.
目方の家から拝借してきた。火の薬。
Oh! That was the secret medicine passed down by the Nakata. It was a magical medicine that could cure any disease or injury.
人の身には薄めれば毒かもしれんがな。
Too much medicine would become poison. Poison could also be used as a form of medicine. Since I didn't know the usage or the dosage, I was against using an unknown medicine. I was hesitant, but...
お主が目覚めさせようとしているそいつが何者だか忘れたか。夏姉さんは。そうとも、鬼よ。
In my heart, I made a decision. I removed the stopper and placed the opening of the bottle against Natsune-san's mouth. Well, that certainly seemed to do something. There was a bright light residing in her eyes, which she had opened. Her oni eye, I'm assuming, yes? Natsune-san's eyes, which were looking up since she had been sleeping, reflected the blue glow of the ceiling. If it were me, I might have been disoriented and wondering where I was. However, without any hesitation at all, Natsune-san woke up her body and sat up. The eyes that captured mine relaxed into a smile for just an instant.
翔ちゃん、私の刀を。はい。
Whether it was sympathy for a fellow swordsman, or if it was also an offering, a sword in a black scabbard was next to her. After I handed her the sword, Natsune-san knew what she had to do. As with sword in hand, she started to run. Okay.
当たらぬ剣意味はない。
Nakata Kuryu-kuru wasn't a soft sword style based on defense, but a hard sword that could even sever an ox's head.
さあ、受けるがいい。
Nakata Minutsugu advanced on Natsune-san, who had fallen to her knees.
夏姉さん、夏姉さん。
Natsune-san still didn't stand up.
夏姉さん。
Natsune-san still didn't stand up. On her knees, she was still holding her sword, but it was in an unguarded stance, something Nakata Minutsugu could easily see. Illuminated by the phosphorance in the underground sanctuary, a shooting star of steel blinked. Like a plant which scattered an entire flower, not just a petal, the entire calyx fell with a heavy, graphic thud. After falling, that round object rolled along the floor of the sanctuary and sank into the middle of the waterway. From the center of where the ripples originated, the water was stained in red. Next was a heavy, graphic thud, like the sound a too ripe fruit makes when it splatters on the ground. As the black item attached to that round thing hit the ground, a copious amount of red spewed forth, staining everything in red. The floor of the sanctuary was filled with red. It went over the edge into the waterway, muddying the waters with crimson. The sound of the steel blade being sheathed made me quiver with tension. Something within me was strained to the limits, as the shock made me suddenly snap. And I didn't know when, but I had started running towards Nakata Munutsugu. There was no need to unsheathe his sword against someone like me. Nakata Munutsugu's fist slammed into the pit of my stomach. My breathing stopped as the world turned dark. As I bent forward and was about to fall, someone stopped and caught me. If only this arm belonged to Natsune-san. How nice would that be?
では覚悟したまえ。幼い証拠。
However, such a thing wasn't possible.
今度こそ九郎様の身元に行くがいい。
My consciousness went dark. It was surely a darkness from which I would never awaken. One down. Since Nakata Munutsugu was sure to appear there, we head to the Sea God's Shrine, where the fake ritual will be conducted.
Yo, 進行上、カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
So, if we were to go to Sanctuary, maybe it would just lead to this. Well, let's see. I wonder if this was indeed the wrong place. Maybe in order to demonstrate a miracle and have the people continue their belief, the sacrificial ritual had already occurred. Should we have gone to the underground sanctuary instead? We decided to head for the underground sanctuary. I better not develop any hiccups. It's the last thing I need right now.
進行上、カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
Well, let's see what this brings us. God damn it. Let's not hand it over this time.
あなたたちに渡すって約束したけど。
I took a step back from the outstretched hand, bringing the sword also farther away from her.
これは夏姉さんから預かったものだから。だから渡せんと？
I believe she did just say that she wouldn't hand it over, Kohaku. I hadn't said anything about not handing it over. I was just saying that I couldn't just hand it over when Natsune-san wasn't here. It was unfathomable for me to let Natsune-san be killed not once, but twice. If there was a chance she was still alive. However, for an Oni whose only goal was to protect the sword, that sort of logic wouldn't work.
ならば、ここで切るしかないようだ。
Sure there is. The Oni who had even overwhelmed Natsune-san faced me and drew her sword. We were finally able to escape from that Oni after Natsune-san had used the sword. She faced me with a fang peeking out. If that were the case, then I would also use the sword.
やるしかないか。
I had no alternative but to go for certain victory in a sudden first strike.
Yeah!
She dodged the blow that I had swung down with all my might.
なるほど。剣気譲りのいい打ち込みだ。まっすぐに速い矢のごとき一撃だ。しかし相手が悪かったな。
Like a predator before prey, she held her longsword out in a deep stance, as if she were licking her lips in anticipation.
わしは虎。千里を行き、千里を戻る虎。
Like how a tiger compresses all its muscles the instant before it leaps, Kohaku-san took half a step back, and then, Migiwa... Little help? At least stop us?
わしの打ち込みは矢よりも速いぞ。
She let loose an attack faster than an arrow released from a taut bow. Sparks flew as blades collided. The impact traveled down both hands supporting the sword, all the way to my back.
ほう、今のはよく受けた。
It had been an accident. I guessed that the blow would be downwind, and just happened to block the incoming blade of the sword. There was following a rule of thumb, or cultivating one's perception, but that right now had been half due to luck, not my skill. As someone who had less luck than a normal person, I couldn't rely any more on such things. As I thought, being on defensive wouldn't work.
遅いぞ遅い。そんな振りでは猿も切れんぞ。
Well, gee. I guess I better start swinging faster.
Yeah!
I thought I had a good comeback, but I didn't.
悪あがきを。そらそらそらそら。やっ、たま。
From above, from below, from the left and from the right. An upward cut, a reverse cut. Like a storm, the blade flew in all directions as I stood beneath the sword's shadow. The power of the sword raised my speed and swordsmanship noticeably, so I was somehow able to endure. I couldn't find a time to counterattack. I could do nothing but stay in a defensive position.
おさ、もう息切れ？ まさか
You're no help!
わけには。わかったわかった。もう十分だ。
Kawaku-san lightly leapt backwards, increasing a distance between us. She then sheathed her longsword in her scabbard. I declare victory by default, because you gave up.
息切れするぐらい振ってこの通りですから、持たせておいても構わないかも。
Oh, I see. So this was a secret
剣を持
test
つに
of
は資
courage,
格がいるの
huh?
よ。今のはその試験だったわけ。試験
Slashing at my opponent's face without warning me made me feel even worse.
っていうか合格なんだけど、剣をそんなに振り回して平気な顔してる長が化け物に思えてきた。
Makes you think Osa is a monster? Well, I guess a monster can by definition be a thing too, so...
押しより小市が流れておるなら、できたところで不思議はないが。まあ、剣は剣気を助けるまでの間、お主が持っていても構わん。
What do you mean by thicker blood than you, exactly?
助けるまでって。構わんぞ。奴の息がかかっているこの島については、調べる必要を感じていたところだ。
Jeez, right when we're in a hurry.
引くものか。
Where are we on the flow chart?
進行時、カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
Right here, okay. I was going to save Natsumi-san. Swinging the sword, I mowed down the Moryu as I literally cut a path in order to continue forward.
おい翔子、何ですか？翔子、その剣をわしによこせ。なんでですか？お主ではその剣を扱いきれないと思ったからよ。
Well, then what would the... Fine, okay,
先ほどの
whatever.
ような戦いぶりでは、そう遅からず剣に食われるぞ。
You know what? Screw you.
そうか。お主が最後まで使うか。わかった。お主が持っておれ。剣の力があるならば、多少はお主も戦力になる。だが、もしもの時は切って捨てるぞ。
Okay.
わしに殺されたくないのなら、なるべく剣は抜かぬようにしろ。
And then we continued to travel downwards. Roryu's halberd and the sword collided. I exchanged opponents with Kohaku-san. From the middle of the waterways, a large amount of Moryu. However, to deal with them, even I could. Like an unstrained windmill, I made a big swing with the sword and turned the swarm of Moryu to dust and ashes. The sword was countless times heavier than a bamboo sword, but I continued to swing it without getting tired. As if it were stopping my weariness. Inside me, the part that was connected to the sword began to get corrupted. A beast is dwelling over there. A dark, sticky beast of calamity. Violent and overwhelming, it wasn't something that could be controlled. Right now, it was still chained up in a prison with iron bars, but as the thing raged about, the not-so-thick iron bars started to creak. The roar of the beast caused them to rattle. The iron in my prison wasn't that strong. Yeah, no shit. Well, now's an opportunity for you to show me you're a woman of your word, Kohaku. I swung the sword. Power poured out as the sword devoured the small things moving about. And then, I headed towards a body that held greater power than my own and was still, unfortunately, not moving. No! Natsune-san! Natsune-san, wake up and run! I wanted to close my eyes, but my fiery eyes were wide open as Natsune-san's face was reflected in them. Golden light flickered at the edge of my vision. In front of me was the blood of an Oni. That blood was thicker and more nebulous than the humans. The edge of my lips lifted up in a grin. And then I let go of my determination, which wouldn't move my body the way I wanted it to. My consciousness dissolved into a syrupy waste. And another one down. You can have it now.
Kohaku-san wa washi no koto nara ki ni suru na. 理由を言えば、わしの血が特別だからだよ。薄いとはいえ、あれを使う資格を持つ血が流れておる。
And then we continue to travel downwards. Okay, what do I want to do here now?
進行上、カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
Defeat the enemy would bring us down there. Let's look. Let's see. Never mind. I guess that was a mistake. But even then, the number of Moryu did not decrease. With a splash like the sound of running water, a webbed hand reached out past the edge of the waterway. Next, long ears, and a large face peeked out as it surfaced from the middle of the waterway. It wasn't just that location. The waterways over there, and beyond, it was occurring everywhere in the underground sanctuary. Roryu summed up Moryu faster than we could defeat them. However, to deal with them, even I could. Like an unstrained windmill, I made a big swing with the sword, and turned the swarm of Moryu to dust and ashes. The sword was countless times heavier than a bamboo sword, but I continued to swing it without getting tired. as if it were stopping my weariness. Inside of me, the part that was connected with the sword. And here we go again. Let's restrain myself this time. Curiosity killed the cat. No, as a cursed I am enshrining a god that shouldn't be touched. The most appropriate reaction would be receiving a curse. Almost always. If you looked when you were told not to look and touched something you were told not to touch, it'd end badly. As someone with bad luck, there was no need for me to needlessly poke at a bush that might cause a snake to rush out. I didn't think it could turn out to be something where it said to contain poison, but actually contains treasured malt syrup. I unknowingly had reached my hand out towards the sword, so I had to use my opposite hand to pull back that hand.
ダメダメ。我慢我慢。
I wasn't a kid who couldn't be trusted to watch the house anymore. I faced a direction where I wouldn't have to look at the sword and pass the time. We're gonna actually go with you this time and see if maybe we can help you out with your duel with Nakata. Although I sincerely doubt we'll be able to, because we're pretty much next to useless in general. But I didn't even think of stopping her. Like how it was for Natsune-san, I also had things I would like cleared up. That's why I also decided to go along. I was walking through a green forest. I felt a bit of deja vu. I walked through a forest I should have visited before, following Natsune-san's unfaltering steps. The green forest surrounded the Tokisaki as if protecting them. This was Nakata's private grounds, Kurosama's forbidden land. It's said that the Nakata mansion is located at the break in the forest. It said there is a massive, stately gate at the entrance to the Forbidden Land, as if it were watching over the place. As if they were trying to prevent people from entering forbidden territory, we saw a massive, stately gate. We had passed by this gate before. Unlike me, who had lost my memories of 8 years ago, from Natsune-san's point of view, not even a year had passed. Natsune-san had no doubts in her mind. Though I was hesitant, I followed after her form, clad in black. We passed by the Nakata gates. The sky was holding itself back for tomorrow, the day of Kurosama's festival. A strong wind blew. That wind made a sharp, slicing sound. The sound of a longsword slicing the wind resounded. Dressed in pure white, a fitting uniform for a Shinto priest, was a man entering old age, silently swinging a sword repeatedly. He had a few smile lines around his eyes, and the wrinkles connecting the edges of his mouth and eyebrows stood out. He wasn't very tall, but even through the white ropes I could tell that he had trained his body to its limit. The impression was that of tempered steel, which had continuously forged until all impurities had been hammered out. His restrained and austere manner stood out. That man with a gloomy air about him ignored our footsteps and continued swinging. This was the person that killed Natsune-san. This was Nakata Munetsugu, the person who had defeated Natsune-san, #1 in Japan. With impeccable timing, he swung 2, 3 times along the same arc. His peerless swordsmanship was like seeing a replayed film. His compressed breaths were close to silent. I could only hear the sound of the sword slicing the wind. The sword stopped precisely. He quietly took a breath and sheathed his sword. After Natsume-san confirmed that, she called out to him.
失礼します、根方さん。
今日は九郎様の祭儀を行う日だ。という戸を締め切り、一歩たりとも外に出てはいけないという決まりを。君は確か。
8年前にお世話になった鳴海かやです。根方九郎流宗家。根方宗次さん。
I like Nakata's rather downplayed surprise reaction. Like it's only a mild surprise for him to see a person that he cut down like 8 years ago suddenly appear before him again. Like I would think that for most people they would have at least a slightly stronger reaction than that, but well, this guy's a bona fide badass, so yeah, maybe that's why. There's just not very many things in general that faze this man. Even towards the person who killed her, Natsume-san was upright and honest as she lowered her head while speaking to him. Nakata-san was looking at someone that he supposedly killed 8 years ago, who still had the same form she had then. His expression didn't change much. He said that as if accepting just that fact.
君は私が切った初めての人間だったし、そこに至る経緯も得意なものだったから、今でもよく覚えている。
にしては、あまり驚かないんですね。
儀式を終えて戻ってくると、遺体はすでにそこにはなかった。どちらかな？
Has she been alive? Or has she returned to the land of the dead?
君も知っている通り、私は根方の当主であり、クロークルーの祭儀を執り行うものだ。世の中の断りが、常識の枠というものが、世に思われている以上に歪んでいることなど、それで私に何の用事かね。できれば手早く済ませてほしい。8年前と同様に。
Nakata-san suddenly stopped his diffident, unfaltering speech as one of his eyebrows jumped up.
成美さん、そちらの子は
Recognize me?
この子は私のいとこの娘。いとこ名の幼い翔子です。
Well, we definitely got a stronger reaction from him this time. He furrowed his brow deeply. He wasn't surprised at Natsume-san, who hadn't changed since 8 years ago, but was surprised at an 8-year-old me. Why so surprised?
どうしてそんなに驚くんですか？
あえてそれを聞くかね。君は覚えていないのかね。
つい先日まで忘れていました。今でもそれはおぼろげで、はっきりとは思い出せません。
About me dying. About me being killed by the person in front of me. That might have happened. However,
夏姉さんが、成海かやが蘇ったことにも驚かなかった人が、どうして私がここにいるだけで驚いたりするんですか？
君がそうしていることで、全てが意味を失うからだ。成美さんの犠牲も、私の犠牲も、私の。
If I was alive, then did that mean a sacrifice couldn't be offered?
いや、今日この日に君が私の前に現れたのは、君には二重の資格がなかった。やはり根方の長子でなくてはダメだった。
I could withstand the Hinokusuri, so I have been sacrificed in place of the rightfully qualified eldest Nakata child?
君がそうしていることで、その推論が覆される。
So I hadn't been sacrificed 8 years ago. That's why Nakata-sen unsheathed his sword once again.
今度こそ君をクロークルーのニエとしよう。
翔ちゃん、これを持っていて。
Natsune-san handed me the sword as she held her nameless blade, standing in front to protect me. Just like 8 years ago, a person clad in black was standing in front of me. Just like 8 years ago, a person clad in white was in front of her. Both Natsune-san and Nakata-san didn't raise their voices. Both had something they wanted and had to protect. Since those interests couldn't be aligned, there could be no discussion. Swords clashed and sparks flew as the #1 in Japan, plus Oni's strength faced off against the Oni Taiji art of Nakata Kuru Kuru. Natsune-san was constantly on the attack. Nakata Munetsugu was like flowing water as he used the minimal amount of movement to deal with Natsune-san's strikes. And each time, he would make a counter-strike at the appropriate moment. Natsune-san would escape with a shallow gash from the counterattack, as I watched the power of an Oni seal it up. If Natsune-san were a human, it seems she wouldn't have been the match for Nakata-san.
8年前もそうだったが、成美かや。君の動きは鋭いが、あまりに直線的すぎる。
飛車のごとき。
Her movement stretched forwards, backwards, and to the side.
目にも止まらぬその速さゆえ、動きを追って避けるのは難しい。しかし、
before Natsune-san could strike him, Nakata Munetsugu rotated and shifted his body to the side.
相手が動くより速く、その動きを読むならば。
Natsune-san's blade swung down into empty space. Nakata wasn't there.
君の打ち込みは見えずとも避けられる。
In the slight opening after Natsune-san swung down her sword, Nakata Munetsugu maintained a flawless form as he swung.
では、次はこちらから行こう。
This time, Nakata's strike against Natsune-san wasn't a shallow gash, but deep enough to reach bone. Natsune-san used the strength of an Oni's legs to jump back, but even then, she couldn't endure it and went down on one knee. The injury was deep, and it hadn't closed yet. Natsune-san shouted that as red blood, the same color as mine, gushed out. At the sound of Natsune-san's voice, I'm gonna draw... Wait. You know what? Yeah, I'll draw a sword. I realized I could do something. That's right. If I unsheathed the sword... Not sure why I wasn't affected much, but humans hit the miasma of the sword, got hurt, and had their movements dulled. Its effects didn't distinguish between friend and foe. It was like a genocidal weapon that would hurt all those around it. Besides being an Oni, Natsune-san had swung the sword before, so I didn't think she'd be as affected as Nakata Munetsugu. If the miasma of the sword could interfere with Nakata Munetsugu's movements, then Natsune-san would have a chance at winning. With my arms, I firmly clutched the pommel of the sword. Something seemed to enter me from that location. A viscous black powder, or did I get powder, that would dissolve and mix up all colors, entered into me. Before I could unsheath it, Nakata Munetsugu stopped facing off against Natsune-san and headed my way. Nakata Munetsugu had continued to dodge every attack as if he could foresee them. He'd also been keeping track of my movements. One secret sword art was the ability to view an opponent as if watching from a hill, but Nakata Munetsugu also saw his surroundings. Nakata Munetsugu, who was headed my way in order to take care of a dangerous situation.
Abenai! Shota!
History repeats once again. Natsune-san, trying to protect me, covered me for her entire body. I thought her head had shifted its place, as her body suddenly got lighter.
Nani?
Where Natsune-san's face had been just a moment earlier, there was nothing there. And I could see Nakata-san beyond that.
Nekata Kuroryu, Tsubaki. 並々ならぬ体力を持つ鬼とはいえ、首を落とされてはそうたやすく復活することはできまい。
夏姉さんの首。
Now that I think about it, exactly what had fallen earlier. My field of vision was stained in the color of Tsubaki. And I suppose I just get sacrificed off screen. The ritual originator. But more than that, more importantly was...
馬老流について聞きたいことがあります。
誰かね？
赤眼の陰陽師、赤眼鬼。
It was said that a one-eyed, white-haired Omiyuji had brought to Urashima the ritual of sacrificing an ox to the deity. Just like how Natsune-san was deceived by Roryu, the Nakata-san might also have been deceived in the same way. If that were the case, then wouldn't the ritual that Roryu brought over be, on the contrary, dangerous? If we discuss that, then wouldn't Nakata-san become an ally?
馬老流。彼はそういう名前なのかね？私が知っている名前は鬼一方言。
The Omiyuji, with a character for demon in his name, had brought the ox-killing ritual and one other to the Nakata. You could think that the purpose of the highly visible ox-killing ritual was to hide the existence of the true ritual. Nakata-san, who was supposed to carry out the true ritual that was brought here by that Oni. Nakata-san unsheathed his sword once again. He drew his sword, indicating he wouldn't waste his breath answering. Well, so much for that little plan of ours.
今度こそ君をクロークルーの逃げとしよう。
And now we're gonna run. Okay. Just wanted to double check, make sure there wasn't an additional little branch that I had to be made aware of right there. Clutching the sword, I turned on my heel and ran towards the gate we had passed through. If Nakata and Munetsugu were on the side of Roryu, then this was the only thing we couldn't hand over. Also, if I were there, Natsune-san couldn't seriously concentrate on escaping. Among normal people, I was considered rather strong, but before an Oni and a genius, I could only get in the way. Behind me, Natsune-san stood up.
倒せなくても倒れないことならできる。鬼の体は人よりも魂に近い器だから。心が立ち上がるならこの身も立ち上がる。
その傷で立つのか。
I left Nakata-san behind, who stood up in order to allow me to escape, and passed by the Nakata gate, and we're gonna run right into Ororyu, right? I ran down the path that Natsune-san and I had traveled to get here, and headed in the direction of the ocean. I wasn't wrong about the uneasiness I felt from looking at Natsune-san when she told me to leave. Anyways, I had to make sure I wasn't caught. I had to give the sword to Migiwa. That's right. If Migiwa were here, course, if Migo were alone, she wouldn't be able to stand up to Nakata Munutsugu. But if it were both of them... I broke out of the forest. The salty wind ruffled my hair. A strong sea breeze was blowing. From here, it was just a little farther until the cave. From the cave, it was just a little farther until the stepping stones. I ran towards the only stepping stones. Did you forget? Those stones won't show up until later. The sky was blue. There was still time before dusk. However, it was already past high tide and I could see the stepping stones beneath the waves as they were slowly receding. As I held onto the sword, without any hesitation at all, I tried to cross over the sea. Oh wait, not Roryu. It's probably gonna be more of those Moryu. They'll just grab me by the ankle and then pull me down to the sea to drown, right? Even if it was just a little bit, I wanted to take the sword further from Urashima. Even if it was just a little bit, I wanted to ask for Migo's help sooner. It would be nice if Natsunise-san were able to catch up to me while I was crossing the stepping stones. However, nothing like that happened. The sun shining on my back started to slowly change color. Migo should be starting on her way here. Since this much time had already passed, would I not make it in time? No, that can't be true. If I moved a little faster... I lost my balance as a wave swept my foot, and I fell into the ocean. Swim! Clutching the sword which I had kept my hands on, I was in the middle of an ocean made rough by strong winds. I sank into the middle of the ocean. Come on, did you forget how to swim? As my body sank into the sea, my consciousness also sank. That's what I thought. If this continued, I would end up in a watery grave. If this continued, I would disappear among the bubbles in the ocean. If I lost consciousness now, I would never regain it again. However, my consciousness got fired up. The wind blowing against my cold skin, water droplets robbing me of warmth, the icky feeling of wet clothes clinging to me. It wasn't just a feeling against my skin. There was the taste of the salty brine of the tides in my mouth. Besides the sense of sight, the information I received from my other senses told me I had risen above the ocean.
気がついたか?
Ah, you saved me. At the sound of that voice, I opened my eyes. I was shocked at the white face and red eye in front of me. Her face, which looked younger than mine, had a daring and cunning look that didn't match. I had seen that face countless times. That isometric face, with the large right eye shining red, and the left eye closed tightly was...
赤眼の陰陽師.
I reflexively started to get into a fighting stance, but a moment later, my thinking caught up to my body.
違うわ。確かに狩衣姿はいかにもな陰陽師だし、あの左目は。
Yes. Natsunise-san did say that.
ああ、老竜とは別人だったんだっけ?
I gave a relieved sigh. At the same time, the tension left my body. I didn't mean... Well, she didn't mean to confuse you for Roryu.
バカ者が、魔老竜なぞと同じにするでない。
She knocked my skull as if checking if there was anyone inside.
まあ、多少は似ておるところもあるが。
As Tsubaki's spirit used the long nail of her right index finger to touch her closed left eye, she said,
稚語さながらの可憐なわしと、むくつけき大男とが同じであるわけないじゃろう。
I can only imagine how irritated he might get if he were actually here to hear you say that. Since I hadn't seen the real Roryu myself, I didn't know whether the person was big or small, or even its gender. However, putting aside her crafty words and actions, and just considering her outward appearance, she truly was cute.
わしを椿と樹木の精と呼んだか。そのような呼ばれ方は初めてだな。
Glad I brought some additional amusement to your, really long life. Well, maybe it's not that long for you, because you're pretty much just been asleep through most of it. She looked behind her as if asking if some other person felt the same way. What came back was a light snicker.
Hello, Osa.
Hello, Migiwa. I squinted at that familiar voice and noticed that Migiwa was wearing odd clothing and standing behind the not Tsubaki spirit. She had a form-fitting jacket on her upper body, with chainmail beneath. On her lower body, she was wearing something like baggy work pants, tied up at the ankles. Wearing something like that, it really gave the impression of...
Ninja? Yes, ninja-fu.
The strange impression I got was, if this were their uniform, the Kiribi tribe were an organization of rather peculiar tastes. Hey, I think that's the first time I've ever seen that expression on Kohaku. After Migiwa twirled around to let me see all of her uniform, she introduced a person with a dumbfounded look on her face.
彼女は琥珀さん。昔からの剣の守り手で、剣を封じているうちの塔のスーパーバイザーってところかな。
Kohaku, the guardian of the sword.
見た目ちっちゃいけど、かなりの年上だから気をつけなさいよね。右は聞こえておるぞ。おお、怖っ。
Kohaku-san probably felt something similar to the hard-to-describe feeling I occasionally had when dealing with Momoko. As if to recover her composure, Kohaku-san, with her opened right eye, turned towards me.
ところで娘、何故お主が老流の名を知っておる？それは。
And we just circle right back here, huh?
進行上、カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
And yet, there's one little branch here. Interesting. And then, I head towards a body that held greater power than my own, and was still, unfortunately, not moving. Where am I?
進行上、カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
I only got this variant, at least. But my asthma of the sword was devouring me.
夏姉さん。
I was losing myself.
夏姉さん、逃げて。私から。翔ちゃん。
Whether my voice reached her, or perhaps it was in reaction to the sword's miasma, Nasune-san seemed to have woken up. Thank goodness. However, I had lost my sense of self. I was swallowed up by the black, viscous power of the sword. That black power went one by one through my cells, staining them, and staining them. It even invaded my brain. My thinking dulled. My thinking collapsed. The ordered system that was Osanai Shoko crumbled, changed into some syrupy mess that wasn't anything at all.
切るしかないぞ。
That's right. There was no choice but to cut me down. I was the sword, something that could slay anything. No, I...
生贄になった証拠を救うつもりで クロークルーを切りに来たのにこんな結果になるとは皮肉なものだ。剣の担い手は死ぬまで、魂の一辺までをも食われるまで、混沌に蝕まれ苦しみ抜くことになる。自我の一辺が消えるまで。
なら翔ちゃんはまだ
ああやって暴れているのはな、まだ魂が残っていて、その魂が蝕まれていく苦痛に耐えきれずのたうち回った挙句のことだ。
翔ちゃん、私が一番恐れていたこと、それが目の前で起こるだなんて。ごめんなさい、翔ちゃん。
I'm the one that should apologize. I'm the one that made this shit happen.
もうこれ以上見るに耐えない。あなたが狂って壊れる様は、だから私の中の鬼と共にあなたの鬼を終わらせよう。
Thud. I felt as if something within me had calmed down. I, who had been swallowed up by a swirl of darkness, had been definitively stopped by something. Something like a stake was fastening me to something that I didn't want to lose. I coughed. The air coming from my crushed lungs was stained in red. It was a pained cough that disturbed the nighttime air. The coughing caused my body to constrict. The cells rubbing against each other gave off heat.
翔ちゃん、これで一緒に。
I see. If I'm with Natsume-san, then... I think that's definitely the worst ending on her route by
環境
far.
設定を保存するけど、
Let's return the sword this time.
私はこうして生きていたんだし、クロークルーなんて切る必要ないんだから。剣はそうね。
There was no reason for keeping it anymore.
この剣がとても危険なものだということは、実際に振るった私が一番よく知っているわ。やはりこれは封印されてしかるべきもの。ステンの鬼切りに返しましょうか。
I felt that if we talked to that Onikiri from Suten, she would understand.
右輪は次の艦長で来ると思うから、ここで待っていればいいだけなのか。右輪に連絡つけてみる。もしもし、右輪？
ボサ、今あんた。
もしかしなくても浦島。
Miwa, who fell into the ocean while trying to stop us, seemed to be alive and just fine.
右輪に聞きたいことがあるんだけど、あなたは夏姉さん、剣気をどうするつもりなの？
もちろん切る。切って剣を取り返す。
Her answer was what I had expected.
じゃあ剣を返すって言った場合は？
もちろん。ってボサ、今なんて言った？
だから剣を返すって言った場合よ。説得？うん。思い込みの誤解が解けたのよ。
So on and so forth.
ロウリュ、そいつが元凶か。わかった。夕方にそっちに行くから、それまでのんびりそこで待て。
The conversation in Miwa got cut off. Since I didn't charge my phone last night, the remaining power was unreliable.
よ、進行。カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
There's still something else right here from the looks of it. Let's try this. This is the sword.
これがその剣。進行状態。カーソルを合わせると章台。
I tried to hold the sword that Natsume-san held. I felt as if something were slowly trying to enter the palm of my hand. and it felt as if something were slowly exiting from the palm of my hand. I felt a dark heat that would melt anything to a viscous soup like a melting pot, causing me to let go of my hand. I see. It's true that this might be something dangerous.
翔ちゃん、なんともないの?
Almost let the beast enter me. It's not that there wasn't anything wrong, but
私はその剣を持っていると。
somehow it seemed like it was a big difference between what Natsune-san and I felt as we held the sword. Was it simply my body? I didn't feel much pain even when needing stitches, while Natsune-san made a fuss even over a
危
scratch.
険なものだって感じは受けるけど、特にそれ以上はどうして？まさか翔ちゃんはやっぱりあの時に。
8 years ago, after I had been separated from Natsune-san,
殺されてしまったの？
there were many things about 8 years ago that I still couldn't remember.
もしかしたら翔ちゃんは今の私と同じように死んで蘇った鬼かもしれない。
Well, I'm aging, so unless I'm a special kind of Oni, I highly doubt it.
驚かないの？夢を見るもの。
I saw a dream where I was sinking to the bottom of the sea. But still. And here we are, once again.
進行状態の把握は大事よね。カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
Just circle right back here.
その老竜、陰陽師を倒せば。
Oh. Then, the karma from 8 years ago will all be
次の
cleared.
艦長で来るかしら。よ、進行上。カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
Oh, look at that. I inadvertently got a new scene here. If that person were to come, I wonder if it would be at twilight, the time of gloaming.
鬼は夜行性だって言ってたから、次の艦長かも。
So it would be tomorrow morning.
ともあれ、ここで待っていれば。
And Onikiri would be coming across those stepping stones. And that Onikiri would probably be chasing after the sword. That's right. If the opponent was the Sekiganki, then the enemy of an enemy is my friend. So I wondered if we could get Mikuwa to help.
進行状態。カーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
I think... I don't know. Maybe I'll unlock new scenes for both these branches regardless of which answer I choose. So, let's just see. Start with waiting here. Don't necessarily think it matters. At least on this part.
スキップ。
There we go.
進行上。カーソルを合わせる。
It would be fine if Mikuwa came along this road, but... that didn't mean Mikuwa was the only person that would cross over, though. Last night, there was... that Oni King who could even overwhelm Natsune-san and became an Oni, and who controlled a huge Oni, might come first. Sekiganki Baruri. I gripped the sword that Natsune-san left in my care. The power of the sword pulled in the palm of my hand. I knew this was a terrifying power that could devour me, but if Natsune-san hadn't used the power of the sword last night, I don't know if we could have escaped. I knew it was a dangerous power, but if a situation arose, it was better than helplessly standing by and being killed. If that were the case, then I'd rather... I gripped the sword. For a moment, the ocean, bathed in the light of dusk, looked muddy. I saw a shadow move across the ocean. Someone was crossing over the stepping stones. Different than how I had been clinging to the rocks this morning, this person lightly leapt over the rocks as it crossed over. Miwa was also rather nimble, but this agility was beyond human ability. Kohaku. Noni was crossing over the stepping stones. I wondered if Roryu was coming. In the glow of evening, I could clearly see the skin and hair were white. The reason the left eye was tightly closed was surely not because the reflection from the amber sea was too bright. The one-eyed, white-haired Omiyuchi, Roryu, was coming. I gripped the sword tightly. The muddy, viscous power swirled around in my head. Anyways, why don't I kill that thing? Let me kill her before she summons that Oni. After I made that decision, my body automatically started to move in order to kill Bob Roryu. Though my body should have been exhausted, it moved with unprecedented speed and force. The power flowing from the sword allowed my body to move even faster, and with even more force. It dodged my swing with the sword.
なんだお主は。許せない。許せない。
Not in the mood to talk, I swung the sword with all my might. I swung the sword. I forgot about the correct method of swinging the sword, which was ingrained in my body, and just swung the sword with all my might. Entrusting myself to the power of the sword, I swung with speed and power. The heft and balance of the sword was different from a bamboo or wooden sword, so it shouldn't be swung the same way. That's why, right now, more than the form of Kendo, it resembled a dark, muddy thing that was invading me through my hand. If I entrusted myself to that power, I swung the sword. As I swung the sword, power rushed in and caused my mind to go hazy, as if I were cloaked in a black fog. Roryu dodged my swing of the sword with a surprised look. The miasma covered her face as she annoyingly cocked her eyebrow. Jeez, what's she dislike about this? Well, you are swinging a deadly weapon at her. Wasn't this the sword she wanted and had deceived Natsume-san in order to obtain? I was going to bury this into that small white body of hers, so there was no need to run, right? Since I'm going to give her what she wanted, she should just remain silent and quietly accept it.
そうか。剣に理性を食われたか。厄介なことになったが、あの剣気の相手をするよりは、この小娘の方が数段楽そうだ。
A fang peeked out as the Sekiganke grinned. She unsheathed the longsword hanging at her waist. What fun! Was she going to fight?
Osa!
A voice I seemed to recognize called out to.
ちょっとオサ、あんた何を?
I didn't really understand, but she seemed to be an ally of blank. If that were the case, then with this sword, My consciousness was swallowed up by darkness.
Roryu! 何？赤眼の陰陽師、夏姉さんを騙した！
I reflexively put my hand on the sword I was clutching. I ran towards the one-eyed, white-haired Omiyuji.
進行上、カーソルを合わせると
Okay,
章台が
we're
表
on the
示さ
path
れ
to
る
this
わよ。
one too now. Sekiganke. Baryu to cut her down. Though my body should have been exhausted, it moved with unprecedented speed and force. Power flowing through the sword allowed my body to move even faster, and with even more force. It allowed me to move in ways that ignored the limits of my physical body.
そうやって助けたふりをして、私も騙すつもりだったんだ。お主、何を言っている？許せない。許せない。
I swung the sword. I swung the sword. I forgot about the correct method of swinging a sword, which was ingrained in my body, and just swung the sword with all my might. Trusting myself to the power of the sword, I swung with speed and power. The heft and balance of the sword was different from a bamboo or wooden sword, so it shouldn't be swung the same way. That's why, right now, more than the form of kendo, it resembled a dark, muddy thing that was invading me through my hand. If I entrusted myself to that power, I swung the sword. As I swung the sword, power rushed in and caused my mind to go hazy, as if it were cloaked in a black fog. Roryu dodged my swing of the sword with a surprised look. The miasma covered her face as she annoyingly cocked her eyebrow. Jeez, what'd she dislike about this? I shall not repeat myself. Wasn't this the sword she wanted, and had deceived Natsune-san in order to obtain? I was going to bury this into that small white body of hers, so there was no need to run, White. Since I'm going to give her what she wanted, she should just remain silent and quietly accept it.
そうか。剣に理性を食われたか。厄介なことになったが、あの剣気の相手をするよりは、この小娘の方が数段楽そうだ。
A fang peeked out as the Sekiganke grinned. She unsheathed the longsword hanging at her waist. What fun! But was she going to fight? A voice I seemed to recognize called out to Blank. I didn't really understand, but she seemed to be an ally of Blank. If that were the case, then this sword owl. My consciousness was swallowed up by darkness. And another bites the dust. Now let's do the silent treatment. Jeez, this was really... How exactly did something like this happen? Since Natsune-san talked about what happened to her, it was my turn to talk, since we might need to clarify some things.
そういえば。
I told her about myself. About how the kendo team came here to have a training camp. About how Migiwa had an eye on me because I was related to Natsune-san. And about last night, when I had set eyes on Natsune-san with the power, with the sword in hand.
進行状態のカーソルを合わせると章台が表示されるわよ。
Looks to me I pretty much bottomed everything out here. So maybe it's about time that I start working my way back up.
タイトル画面に戻る？
Okay, you know what? Let's return the sword.
私はスキップよ。
Skip to an ending real fast. Go with you.
スキップ。
So surprised.
どうしスキップ。
Draw a sword.
スキップよ。
I want to check and see how many endings I have left on Kai's route. Because I have a feeling there's not that
環境
many
設定を
left.
セーブ。青い城。 の結末を見たいわけ?
Yeah, looks like I have only 3 left. So yeah, not that much left to go. I already got most of them. Okay, you know what? Since I feel like I've made some good progress in this episode, I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut things off here. And we can try finishing what's left of Kai's route, and then starting Kohaku's in the next route. I mean, next episode, excuse me. I misspoke. I'm certainly excited to check out Kohaku's route and see what her story will have to offer, because I certainly find her to be the most interesting character of the whole bunch, to be honest. Plus, I'm just generally curious, like, what would it be like to actually spend some time with her outside of, you know, tense scenes and the like? Like, how would she conduct herself when there's nothing serious going on, you know? I really want to get to know more, to get to know more of that side of her. And then I guess after that, once we get through Kohaku's route, all we'll have left to do, I guess, is what's left of Nami's. Anyway, I think, so yeah, I'm gonna end things here. I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Aoi Shiro. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will see you all next time. Take care.